Brother stood up at my wedding reception, raised his glass, and said, "To the son my parents actually wanted." Then he laughed. Everyone at the head table laughed. My wife's hand found mine under the white linen tablecloth and squeezed so hard I felt her ring pressed into my finger. I smiled. I kept smiling for the rest of the night, but when the last guest left and the venue lights dimmed, I sat alone at the bar and counted 7 missed calls from my mother. 7. In a span of 2 hours, from the same woman who, 3 weeks earlier, told my father-in-law that I had always been the difficult one. My name is not important. What I am is a husband now, a structural engineer who spent 11 years being the family's shadow and 6 months being its ATM. A man who, on the night he was supposed to be the center of the universe, discovered that some families can be in the same room and still make you invisible. This is the story of how I finally stopped being grateful for the scraps. Let me start somewhere that matters. Houston, Texas. A brick house in a quiet neighborhood where the lawns were green and the neighbors waved and nobody would have believed what happened inside. My brother Marcus, older by 4 years, louder by 4 volumes, was the one my father introduced first at every family gathering. My father would start the handshakes before I even crossed the room. "This is Marcus, Stanford grad, going into law." A beat, then almost as an afterthought, "And that's my other son. That's my other son." I heard that phrase so many times growing up that I started to believe it was my actual name. I was good at school. Not the kind of good that got you celebrated at dinner. The quiet kind. The kind where you stayed up past midnight with your textbooks because silence was the only place you felt like yourself. At 15, I placed 2nd in the state, Science Olympiad. I came home with a certificate and a handshake from the governor. My mother put it on the refrigerator with a magnet. That same week, Marcus got into the mock trial regional finals, and my father took the whole family to dinner at a steakhouse. I ordered the smallest thing on the menu, and nobody noticed. What I did not know then, what I only found out years later, sitting in my car outside my own parents' house with a bank statement in my hand, was that the college savings account my parents had opened when I was born had been quietly redirected. Not stolen, redirected. That was the word my mother used when I finally confronted her about it. We redirected resources. Marcus had needed tutors. Marcus had needed prep courses. Marcus had needed a semester abroad. I was the younger one, she said. I was resourceful. I would figure it out. I figured it out. I worked a warehouse job every summer from 16 to 22. I applied for 23 scholarships and received 4. I ate dining hall food on a tight weekly budget I tracked in a notes app. I graduated with an engineering degree and $8,000 in personal debt and a job offer in Houston that paid enough to breathe. I called home to share the news. My father asked if I could loan Marcus $3,000 for bar exam prep fees. I sent the money. I always sent the money. It became a rhythm I did not choose but could not break. Emergency after emergency, each one framed as temporary, each one carrying the same undertone. You're the responsible one. You can handle this. This is what family does. The water heater, the HOA fine, the just a few hundred that always turned into just a little more. I kept a spreadsheet. I am an engineer. I organize what I cannot control. Every transfer, every date, every amount. I kept it synced to my phone, like a second heartbeat I had learned to ignore. My wife. I'll call her my wife, because she is the best thing that has ever happened to me, and this is not her story to be named in. My wife noticed before I did. She is the kind of person who sees the shape of a problem before it announces itself. 6 months after we moved in together, she sat across from me at our kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee and said, "When was the last time your family asked how you were doing? Not what you could do, how you were." I opened my mouth and could not answer. Our wedding was planned for June. Small, the way we both wanted it. 40 people in a renovated farmhouse outside the city. String lights, a playlist we built together over 2 years. Her father gave a toast that made half the room cry. My best friend from college, a guy named Brooks who I met in a thermodynamics study group at 2 in the morning and who has never once let me down, gave a speech that made the other half laugh. The day was everything we had built it to be. My family arrived 2 days before the wedding. My mother immediately rearranged the table assignments. I found out from the venue coordinator, who sent me an apologetic email asking me to confirm the new layout. My mother had moved Marcus and his girlfriend to the head table and shifted Brooks to a table near the back. I called her. She said Marcus had a bad knee and needed to be closer to the exit. Marcus runs half marathons. I had seen him post about one the previous month. I fixed the seating chart. I did not say anything. I told myself, not today. Today is not the day. My father pulled me aside the morning of the wedding. I thought he was going to say something I had been waiting 30 years to hear. Instead, he told me not to make my vows too long because Marcus had a flight back to Dallas the next morning and the reception needed to wrap by 9. I nodded. I said, okay. I tied my tie and looked at myself in the mirror and said, tonight, they will see me. I should have known it would not go cleanly. Nothing ever did with them. The ceremony was perfect. The farmhouse smelled like cedar and jasmine. My wife walked toward me and I forgot every version of the day I had ever imagined, because none of them had prepared me for how real it would feel. When the officiant asked if anyone had any objections, and the room laughed at the formality of it, I felt, for the first time in as long as I could remember, like I was standing in the center of something. The reception started without incident. The food was good. The dancing was easy. Then Marcus stood up before I had given the signal for toast. He did not ask. He just stood, tapped his fork against his glass, and the room quieted out of habit. I will not recite the whole thing. I do not need to. The part that mattered came near the end, wrapped in the close of a joke, the kind that lands with a laugh and leaves a bruise underneath. He raised his glass and said, to the son my parents actually wanted. Then he grinned at my father, who laughed. My mother laughed. Two aunts laughed. My wife did not laugh. Brooks did not laugh. Brooks did not laugh. Her father did not laugh. Her father did not laugh. I smiled. I kept my face exactly where I needed it to be. But my wife looked at me and I looked at her and something passed between us that did not need words. We had talked about my family for 3 years. She knew the spreadsheet. She knew the warehouse summers. She knew about the college fund, the bar exam loan, the HOA fine, the water heater. She knew all of it. After the toast, I slipped away to the side hallway near the kitchen. I needed 1 minute of air that was not filtered through performance. Brooks found me there. He did not say anything clever. He just stood next to me with his jacket loose and his hands in his pockets and said, whatever you need tonight, I'm here. I nodded. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Hey, can you Venmo me for the hotel? I'll get you back next paycheck. I stood in the hallway of my own wedding reception, reading that message. I put my phone in my pocket and walked back into the room. My father-in-law caught me near the bar. He is a retired contractor, a man who built things with his hands and says what he means. He put a hand on my shoulder and said, I want you to know something. What your brother said up there, that was not a joke, and you don't have to pretend it was. He squeezed once and walked away. I had to look at the ceiling for a moment. Later, during a slow song, my mother found me. She touched my arm and started talking about Marcus's new apartment in Dallas, how the lease was steep, how he could really use some help through the end of the year, just until he got his footing, on my wedding night. At my reception, while my wife was on the dance floor, saving a spot for me, I said, Mom, I need you to stop. She blinked. She was not used to that word from me. I need you to hear me, I said, not as a son, as a person. Tonight is mine, not Marcus's, mine. And I am done being moved to the side table at my own life. She started to say my name the way she always did when she wanted to reroute a conversation. Soft, a little wounded, designed to make me feel like I was the one causing damage. I had heard that tone for 30 years. I recognized it the way you recognize a smell from childhood. I said, we'll talk, but not tonight. I walked back to the dance floor. My wife pulled me in close and did not ask what happened. She just danced. The call started after we got back to our hotel room. 7 for my mother. 2 for my father. 1 for Marcus, asking about the Venmo again. I turned the phone screen down and lay in the dark next to my wife and listened to the city outside the window and felt something I had not felt in a long time, which was that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The week after we got back from our honeymoon, I sat down and did something I had been building toward for years without knowing it. I printed the spreadsheet. 11 years of transfers, loans, emergency contributions, covered bills. I put it in a binder, not because I wanted money back. I had made peace with the money. I wanted them to have to look at it, to hold it in their hands, to not be able to say it wasn't real. My parents came to Houston the following month. They said they wanted to see our new apartment. My wife stayed home because she had that right, and also because she knew I needed to do this myself. They stood in the living room with their coats still on, and my mother started in immediately. Marcus's lease. The timing of the market. Just for a few months. You've always been the one we could count on. I went to the shelf by the door and picked up the binder. I set it on the coffee table. I said, 11 years. Every transfer, every loan, every bill I covered because it was always a crisis and I was always the solution. I don't need you to pay me back, but I need you to see it because I am tired of it being invisible. My father looked at the binder like it was an accusation. My mother said, that is what a family does. You take care of each other. Marcus needed more. You were always stronger. I had heard versions of that sentence my whole life. Stronger, more capable, resourceful. Every word designed to make the weight feel like a compliment. I said, I was not stronger. I was just quieter about how much it cost me, and I'm done being quiet. My father's jaw said, you're being dramatic, he said. You have a good life. We supported you. You redirected my college fund when I was 12, I said. You told me I would figure it out, and I did. But I need you to understand that I figured it out alone. And I'm done figuring out Marcus's problems too. The room held the silence for a moment. Outside, a car passed. The refrigerator hummed. My mother started to say something about family and loyalty and what it meant to be a son. I had heard the speech before. I knew where every turn led. I said, I love you. I do. But loving you cannot mean erasing myself. Not anymore. I walked to the door and held it open, not angrily. Steadily. The way you close a chapter, not with a slam, but with a click. My father looked at me for a long moment. Then he picked up the binder. He tucked it under his arm. He walked past me without saying anything. My mother paused at the threshold and started to speak. I shook my head, gently. Take care of yourselves, I said. I mean that. I closed the door. I stood with my back to it and let the quiet of the apartment come in around me. My wife came out of the bedroom and looked at my face and did not ask. She just walked over and leaned into me, and we stood like that for a while, in the entryway of the home we had built together. The messages started that night. My mother, then Marcus, then an aunt who had opinions. Selfish. Cold. After everything they had done for me, I let them sit unread. I read them eventually, because I am not someone who can pretend things don't exist, but I let them sit until I was ready. And when I read them, I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not guilt. Something closer to clarity. Marcus texted 2 weeks later, not about money, just a long message, more honest than I had ever known him to be. That said, he knew what had happened over the years. That he had told himself it was just how families worked. That he was sorry he had let it continue. He said the toast had been a bad joke and he had known it the second it left his mouth. He said he did not expect anything from me. I sat with that message for 3 days before I responded. I did not forgive him all at once. Some things need time and space and proof, but I wrote back and said I heard him. That was enough for now. At work, I was leading a design review for a highway overpass retrofit when my project lead called me into her office. She told me the city had submitted a commendation for the efficiency of our last phase delivery. She said my name specifically. I sat in her office and felt the words land differently than they ever had in my family's house. Not as a surprise, but as a confirmation. That evening, I opened a document on my laptop and started writing. Not for anyone else. Just to put it somewhere outside my own head. I wrote about the wedding toast, the binder, the door. I wrote about Brooke standing next to me in the hallway without needing to say anything smart. I wrote about my wife on the dance floor. I wrote about my father-in-law's hand on my shoulder. I wrote, real family is the people who make room for you, not the people you make yourself smaller for. I did not post it anywhere. Some things are just for you. A few months later, my father called. Not about Marcus, not about money. He called on a Tuesday evening and asked how the overpass project was going. I told him. He asked about my wife. I told him. He did not apologize directly, My father does not move in straight lines, but he stayed on the phone for 40 minutes. He asked questions. He listened to the answers. It was not everything I had ever wanted, but it was something. A beginning, maybe, or at least a different kind of silence. My wife and I bought a house that fall. Nothing grand. A 3-bedroom in a neighborhood with old oak trees and a bakery on the corner that opens at 6 in the morning. The first Saturday we had keys. Brooks came over with a cooler and we sat on the empty back porch with the doors open to the yard and the late October light coming in flat and golden the way it does in Houston when the heat finally breaks. He raised a can and said something about how I'd earned this. I told him to stop being sentimental. He told me to stop pretending I wasn't. My mother called that afternoon. I picked up. She asked if we had space for a guest room. I laughed. A real one surprised out of me. I said we'd see. Things were not fixed. I do not believe in the version of family stories where everything resolves cleanly and the wounds stop mattering. Some of what happened will always have happened. The birthday cake with someone else's name, the college fund that went the other way, the toast. Those things live in the record now. They are not erased by a 40-minute phone call or a changed seating chart. But I live in a house with oak trees and a woman who sees me, with a best friend who shows up without needing to be asked, with work that puts my name on things that hold weight. I built that. Out of warehouse shifts and scholarship applications and late nights in a thermodynamics study group with bad coffee. Nobody handed it to me, not even close. And for the first time in my life, that feels like something to be proud of instead of something to survive. I keep coming back to that moment in the hallway. The kitchen noise behind me, my phone buzzing with a Venmo request from my brother at my own wedding reception. There is something almost clarifying about a moment that absurd. All the years of telling myself it was just how family worked, all the transfers and covered bills and swallowed silences, and it took that one message to make everything finally legible. I did not think what happened to me was random. I think it followed a logic, the way most things do when you look at them honestly. I spent 11 years making myself useful, so I would feel necessary, because useful felt close enough to loved. That is the trade you make when you grow up being moved to the side table. You start performing your value instead of trusting it. And the people around you learn to expect the performance. They stop seeing the cost of it. Not because they are monsters. Because you made it look effortless. Because I made it look effortless. What I had to learn. Slowly, badly, in a therapist's office and in quiet conversations with my wife. And in the middle of the night, staring at a spreadsheet I should never have had to keep, was that being reliable is not the same as being respected. I had confused the two for most of my adult life. I thought if I held things together long enough, someone would eventually notice and say so. That is not how it works. People do not reward what they take for granted. They just take it. The binder changed something, not because it proved anything they did not already know. They knew. But because putting it on the coffee table meant I was no longer willing to carry it quietly. That is the thing about staying silent for too long. The silence starts to feel like consent. But you are agreeing that this is fine, that this is normal, that you do not mind. I minded. I had always minded. I just did not say so until I ran out of space, not to. What got me through, what actually built the life I have now, was not anger. Anger burns, but it does not build. What got me through was something more, like stubbornness rooted in self-respect. The warehouse summers, the scholarship applications at midnight, the thermodynamics study group with bad coffee. I showed up for myself when nobody else did, and I kept showing up, and eventually I became someone who knew how to. That is not nothing. That took something real. Brooks showed up to my empty back porch with a cooler and no agenda. My wife danced without asking what happened in the hallway. My father-in-law put a hand on my shoulder and said 4 sentences that landed deeper than 30 years of family dinners. None of them shared my blood. All of them chose me on purpose. That distinction matters more to me now than I ever thought it would. If you have ever been the one who holds everything together while being made to feel like an afterthought, I want you to know that the weight you carry is real. The fact that you carry it quietly does not make it lighter. And the day you set it down is not betrayal. It is the first honest thing you have done for yourself in a long time. I still talk to my father. We are figuring out what that looks like. Some things take time, and I'm trying to have patience with that, without losing the line I drew. My mother asked about the guest room. I laughed. We will see. The oak trees outside my window are turning now. The bakery opens at 6. My wife is asleep in the next room. I built this out of warehouse shifts and refused silence in a spreadsheet I never wanted to keep. Nobody handed it to me. That is the part I am most proud of.